Good morning, Year 7. This will be your last history lesson of Year 7 before you become Year 8. So let's hope it's a good one, okay? So our title today, our learning inquiry is, for the first Irish migrants, was Britain a land of opportunity or a place of discrimination? That is a very clear inquiry we're going to be looking at this lesson. Keywords, we're going to look at represent, slums, Irish and migration. Then our mastery topic is we're going to understand what caused Irish migration to Britain and how the Irish experienced their new life in Britain. Okay, so because it's our last lesson of Year 7, we're not actually going to be doing the recap quiz because there is meant to be a lesson before this looking at migration from Britain to North America, but I decided to skip that lesson so we could do this one instead. But the result is we won't be doing any quiz, but I'm sure you all will be totally okay with that. So as you can see, since we started doing this scheme at work, we've done this. We've done the Celts, we've done the Romans, we've done the Anglo-Saxons, we've done the Vikings, we've done the Normans, we've done the Jewish migration under the Normans, we've done the migration of the Huguenots. We didn't do the Mayflower. We are now going to be doing the Irish, who arrived in 1845, and they came because the Irish potato famine forces many Irish peasants to migrate to the United States of America and also Britain. And then we didn't also get the chance to do the Windrush, which I also wish we had time to do. So what are we doing today, Year 7? Well, today, Year 7, what we're doing is we're going to learn about the migration of Irish people to Britain in the 19th century. That is the 1800s. The 19th century was categorized by the growth of industry and factories. We call this the industrial era. Like we have the medieval era, we have the ancient era, we have the antiquity era, we have the early modern era. Now we've got the industrial era. You will learn all about the industrial era in Year 8. But the industrial era was massive social and economic change throughout Britain. Britain and the world in general was never the same after the Industrial Revolution, after the Industrial Era. And while now with climate change, Year 7, we are seriously feeling the effects of it. And your year, people your age and younger, are really going to grow up with the consequences of the Industrial Revolution. But let's not worry about that too much. Let's look at the Irish migration to Britain. So before we learn about Year 7, the Irish migration to Britain, it's important that we understand the cause of the migration. We understand our causation factors. We are going to read information on the causes of Irish migration, and then we're going to look at push and pull factors for Irish migration within this text that I am going to read for you. If you're using the worksheet, they're here. Push and pull factors. I've even put definitions on each one below it, but I'm sure a lot of you already know what a push factor is and a pull factor because we've done it so much. But push is when you're forcing someone to migrate, you're pushing them out of your country, and a pull is attracting them somewhere. So another country is pulling them in, they're attracting them with better jobs. You are then going to make a judgment once we've looked at them on which cause had the largest impact on Irish migration. So is it more push factors or is it more pull factors? So when we get to that point, you'll do your little continuum, you'll mark it here, then you'll explain briefly why you've chosen that. Nice and simple, Year 7. You are all masters at this by now. So the causes of Irish migration to Britain. In the 19th century, Ireland was not an independent country, but instead it was dominated by Britain and was part of the British Empire. Ireland was dominated by British Protestant landlords, while most of the population were Catholic. The desperately poor Catholic population was growing. But there was not enough work to go around. And the rents charged by the Protestant landlords who lived elsewhere were too high. Many poor Irish families were reliant on potatoes for food, which grew easily in wet, cold conditions of Ireland. However, in the 1840s, a disease destroyed many of the potatoes, leaving millions of poor Irish people with nothing to eat. This was known as the Irish Potato Famine. As a result, approximately 1 million Irish people starved to death. Another million emigrated, mainly to the USA, Canada, and the United Kingdom. England, Wales and Scotland has been united in the Act of Union in 1801, also with Ireland too. That's why it's the United Kingdom. Britain was an attractive destination for many, not least because it was so close. At the time, Britain was rapidly changing from an economy based on farming to one largely based on industry, factories and mines. There was a huge demand for labour, which Irish migrants were able to fill. Irish migrants did many different types of work, from hard manual labour in factories, mines and quarries to professional jobs such as doctors and police people. Thousands of so-called Irish navvies helped build many of the railway lines, tunnels and canals that we still see and use today. So look, we've just read that year 7. I want you now to think about the push and pull factors shown in that passage. So what factors were forcing people to leave Ireland, and what factors were attracting people to migrate elsewhere? If you haven't so far looked to try and find any, pause the video here and go back about 30 seconds so you can see what we were looking at on that last slide. I'm going to wait about 5 seconds and then I'm going to show you the answers. The first push factor is there was not enough work in Ireland. The second one, high rents by those Protestant landlords. And last one, we've got the Irish potato famine that killed a lot of Irish people. And then pull, what's attracting them elsewhere? Well, Britain's changing industrial economy offered lots of jobs and diversity of jobs offered, such as police person to navvies, things like that. So now we've collected all of our push and pull factors on Irish migration to Britain, we are now going to make a judgment on which cause you believe was most important for Irish migration. On the worksheet, you will see this continuum, and you'll mark on there if you think it was more push or more pull factors. If you're not using the worksheet, you can very easily draw the line across your page, put push on one side, pull on the other side, and then just mark where you think they were, or where you are. So if you're in the middle, like here, or if you just think clearly it's a better economy in Britain they're attracted to and how close it is, you will go here. But if you're like, clearly it's the potato famine that caused it, however jobs encouraged people as well, it gave them somewhere to go, it might be more like here. It's all up to you. Once you've done that, below it I want you just to write a sentence, like a quick summary. Why have you chosen wherever you've chosen. So what was life like for Irish migrants to Britain? Before we learn about what life was like for the Irish migrants in Britain, we are first going to look at how they were represented. This means how people show them in the media. This here, where's my pen? Here it is. This image here, this is a political cartoon from a British political magazine in the 19th century. A political cartoon is basically year 7. It's basically an old school meme. They're really, really interesting political cartoons. And you'll start doing them in next year in year 8 a little bit, but you'll do a lot of them in year 9. And then you'll do quite a lot at GCSE, if you choose GCSE, of course, history. So we're going to analyse this and then answer some questions on it. So what you're going to need is you're going to need a highlighter to do this task. If you are not using a worksheet, you can just note down this subheading, how were the Irish represented in the media, and then list everything you can see below that. So we're going to look at how the people were represented. So I'm going to animate some stuff on here. Actually, give you 5 seconds, pause the video here. What can you find in there? Think about how are the Irish people shown. So pause me now. Okay, so hopefully you found some by yourselves. But first of all, we're going to look at, well, this is an Irish man, and he's shown in a really bad light, isn't he, year 7? He's shown as being really untrustworthy and evil looking, isn't he? Doesn't look very nice or likable. So next one, there's lots of poor looking children. This is something you always see throughout history, that when a new group migrates to somewhere new, they're always represented as having lots of poor children, and lots of poor children. It's just a common way of showing migrants in a very negative light. We've got Fenian, means someone who wants Irish independence from Britain, but there's something more important in the Fenian Guy Fawkes, and that is Guy Fawkes. Guy Fawkes was a famous Catholic terrorist who tried to blow up the Houses of Parliament in the 17th century. This is why we celebrate Bonfire Night, because Bonfire Night represents what Guy Fawkes wanted to do, in the fire being the Houses of Parliament, and then that person we put in the middle, that's Guy Fawkes. So every year when you go Bonfire Night, you're celebrating the ritual burning of Guy Fawkes. How lovely is that, year 7? What message is the author of this source trying to say by linking Irish people to Guy Fawkes? Are they trustworthy? Are they loyal to the British Crown? We've also, I haven't done an animation for this one, year 7, but we can see there's a woman with a child. We've got gunpowder. He's got a flame, so he's clearly able and willing to use it, isn't he? So what we're going to do now on the worksheet is, or questions in general, so if you're not using a worksheet year 7, you can just write each one of these questions in your book, but we're going to answer below them. So I've just got them here as well. So how is the Irishman portrayed in the source? Is he portrayed in quite a positive light, year 7, or a negative light? Now don't you just say he is shown in a bad light, in a negative light. I want you to give me an example of why he's shown in a positive or a negative light. Second question, why is he sitting on gunpowder? What is the author of this source trying to say about the Irish? Think about the term Fenian. Go back if you have to re-listen to the explanation around him. Overall, it's the third question, overall, what is the message of this source about the Irish? Is it a positive one or is it quite a negative one? And also, why? So what was life actually like for Irish migrants? We are going to read some information on what life was like for Irish migrants in Britain. You are then going to answer some questions on the text. The questions are on the worksheet. If you're not using the worksheet, you can simply write them down on a piece of paper. So, what was life like for Irish migrants in Britain? Life for Irish migrants was often tough. Starts off nice and clear, as they were the target of discrimination in Britain. Or unable to afford the expensive housing in unfamiliar cities, Irish migrants would cluster together in certain cities such as Glasgow, Manchester, Liverpool, and London. These were the places where there were most jobs available. Conditions in industrial cities, Year 7, it was terrible. It was awful. And many were forced to live in overcrowded, cramped housing known as slums. Irish migrants were forced into filthy houses out of desperation. This helped fuel a stereotype in the media that Irish people were ignorant, unclean, and violent. Irish people were also viewed with suspicion as they were different. Most Irish migrants were devout Catholics at a time when England was mostly Protestant. You'll learn more about the differences between Catholics and Protestants Year 7 next year. Migrants were accused of taking English people's jobs and being prepared to work for less. At the same time, British rule was weak in Ireland. This led to Irish migrants to be seen as potential terrorists. This is why the source from earlier, the Irishman was sat on gunpowder, a direct link to the gunpowder plot. However, not all Irish migrants were poor. Some came from prosperous middle-class families and continued in their professions. For example, there were many Irish doctors in 19th century Britain. Others were able to improve their social position over time, becoming part of the middle class. So we're now going to answer these questions here. Using worksheet, obviously you can just write on it. If you are not Year 7 using worksheet and you are using your book, you can simply write these questions down. These 4 bullet points are the questions. So, first question, why were Irish people seen as ignorant, unclean and violent? What I think you need to do, Year 7, is go back to that text from earlier and it'll say on there. What cities did Irish people move to in Britain? And what did these cities have in common? Why were the Irish seen as a threat by some people to the British government? Then the last question, were all Irish migrants poor? Finally, Year 7, our plenary, how did first Irish migrants experience their new life in Britain? For this plenary, you're going to choose a word out of our word bank to describe how Irish migrants experience Britain. It is very front and centre on the worksheet. It is, yep, just there. Our word bank, opportunity, poverty, discrimination and fear. You may need to Google what some of those words mean if you don't know, but you're going to do a PPE paragraph explaining why you chose that word. So the point, the vocabulary I would use to describe how the first Irish migrants experienced their new life in Britain was one of these 4 Year 7. The reason I've chosen this word, so for your evidence Year 7, Reason why I've chosen this word is find evidence from today's lesson year 7 and place it there. Then your explanation, your last bit. This word is best for describing how the Irish migrant experienced life in Britain because, and then you do your explanation here. So once you've got all of that done year 7, you all know, because I tell you after each lesson, to take a picture of your work and then to email it to me. So that way I can record your data. And then when you get your report sent home in future, you are rewarded for all your hard work. So that year 7 is our last year 7 lesson of the whole year. How crazy. You are now, next time you see your teachers, you'll be year 8. Before you know it, year 7, you will be in year 11. So, but let's not worry about that. Let's look forward to all the amazing history lessons you're going to have come September. I shall see you then year 7. It is goodbye from Mr. Fisher. Bye bye.